Welcome to the grocery store. I'm a dietitian and diabetes educator, and we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about how to get the most out of your next shopping experience. You've just seen your doctor. They tell you that your blood sugars are a little higher than what they should be, and that you either have prediabetes or diabetes. This probably comes as a shock to you and can often be very overwhelming. Your doctor also tells you that the foods that you're choosing to eat, as well as being active, is even more important than ever. So let's take a look and find out how we can keep shopping fun and have it be an enjoyable experience and even be empowering. Your grocery store shopping experience starts right here, when you're just about to enter the grocery store or have just entered. So a couple things to keep in mind, and this one is probably the most important. You want to go grocery shopping when you're not hungry. I find that if I show up at the grocery store and I'm hungry, it's all over. The other thing to remember is that you want to make sure that you bring a list, helping you stay focused on what you need to buy and making sure your fridge is full of things that you actually need. Lastly, and probably one of the most important things, is sticking to the perimeter of the grocery store. That's where all the goods are, all the natural, basic essentials of a healthy diet are. So we have all of our fruits and our vegetables, the grain products, the milk and alternatives, and the meat and alternatives. They're usually found around the perimeter. Getting caught in the center aisles is often just a recipe for disaster. It's very hard to get out of those sections. Everything is colorful and flashy, and you could spend hours in there and not end up with anything that was on your list. So stick to the perimeter. So when it comes to choosing your fruits and vegetables, it's nice to have a variety. If you're unfamiliar with a certain fruit or vegetable, give it a try. So to be adventurous and just have some fun. Ideally, we want to be focusing on having our dark green leafy vegetables like kale or broccoli. And then we also want to be having our brightly colored fruits and vegetables like oranges, berries. All of those are really high in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, and keep us healthy. Always better to choose fresh or frozen fruits and vegetables rather than canned ones. They're lower in sodium, the nutrient content is often higher. Another thing to keep in mind is better to eat the fruit than to having the juice. Juice just gets into the bloodstream so quickly and makes blood sugars go up really quickly. So with the fruit, we actually get all of that fiber and have much better glycemic control. I should throw some of this broccolini in here too, it looks delicious. Now we're in the grain section. Grains are an important part of a healthy diet for people with diabetes. That ideally we want to have half of our grain products be whole grains, which are higher in fiber and will help us feel fuller as well as more satisfied after we eat. So now that we're in the bread section, we're going to take this opportunity to talk about label reading. Labels are made up of a nutrition facts table that's found on all packaged foods. It consists of calories and 13 core nutrients. Calories are made up of 3 macronutrients. They consist of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. The macronutrient that has the greatest impact on blood sugars is the carbohydrate. So as an example, using this label, if we're looking at the number of carbohydrates, we see 17 grams. Underneath carbohydrates, you see an indentation of fiber and sugar. The reasons that these are indented underneath carbohydrates is that they're incorporated into the carbs. Now, fiber just keeps us regular. It just passes through. So we don't need to account for that energy value in our total amount of carbohydrates. Ideally, we want to keep our carbohydrate load at 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per meal, and at snacks, 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrate per meal. The other important thing to make note of is the ingredient list. So whatever ingredient is listed first is in the largest amount, whereas the ingredient at the end of the list is in the smallest amount. So if you ever see a product where sugar is listed first, let's say even before the flour that something is made out of, then that would be a good indication to you that there would be a lot of sugar in that product and it would raise your blood sugars quite high. When we're thinking about this section, it's also important to be adventurous. Try different grains. If you're always just eating rice, maybe try quinoa or bulgur or barley one time just to see what it tastes like. All of these options are high in fiber and are part of a healthy diet. So now we're in our meat section, and the meat section is an important part of a healthy diet. Meats and alternatives are high in protein. Protein helps us feel fuller after we've eaten, and it also helps us control our blood sugar levels post-meal. So in the meat section, what we want to tune into is the amount of saturated fat that's in products, because it's that saturated fat that has been shown to raise cholesterol levels. So when we're choosing meats, we want to try choosing leaner meats with less marbling, less added fats around the outside. The nice thing about this section as well is that, again, there's labels on everything. So we can actually do a comparison between, let's say, some lean ground beef and some regular ground beef and see which one would be the best choice for us based on that nutrition facts table, and tuning into the number of grams as well as the percentage daily value in the saturated fats that's listed. Chicken is another great meat alternative, especially if you choose a chicken breast without the skin or take the skin off the chicken that you're cooking. Soy products are low in saturated fats, which makes them a nice meat alternative. They help keep our cholesterol levels down and have a cardioprotective benefit. So fish is a really important part of a healthy diet. According to Canada's Food Guide, we want to ensure that we're having at least 2 servings of fish per week. We're so lucky here living in BC where we have so much access to great choices of fish. Ideally, the fattier fishes are higher in the omega-3 fats, which have a cardioprotective effect. Those would include fish like salmon, sardines, mackerel, trout, and herring. Dairy products are an important part of a healthy diet. They're high in calcium, which keeps our bones strong, and are also a good source of protein, which, as I mentioned before, helps keep us satisfied and also helps us to control our post-meal blood sugars. Ideally, with all dairy products, you'll find on the label an M.F. and that actually stands for milk fat. So when it comes to milk, we want to try choosing milk that's 2% or lower. With regards to yogurt, best to read the label, compare the amount of sugar and carbohydrates in the different yogurts because they're all different, and don't forget to look at the portion size. The cheese section is a really important area to tune into that percentage milk fat. So if we look here on the Old Fort cheddar, we see that there's 31% milk fat. That's almost double the amount of milk fat that's in this mozzarella cheese at 15% milk fat. Now, I love cheese, and I think that this is an important area to just talk about how all foods fit in moderation. It's not about restriction, it's about using that moderation to enjoy the foods that we like to eat, but still keep our blood sugars under control and keep our weight at a healthy weight. So beans are awesome. We all should be eating more beans. They're a great meat alternative. They are low in saturated fat, they're high in fiber, and most importantly, they're delicious. So chickpeas, kidney beans, black beans, lentils, dried peas, just having these foods on hand in your house will open up a whole new way of eating. It will offer you some more options when you're cooking your meals. Main thing to remember is that if you're buying canned beans rather than dried, you have to give them a really good rinse. So that way you're getting rid of the salt, or you can even choose a can that doesn't have salt in it, that are just in water. And then by rinsing them, you're also going to get rid of those extra sugars that potentially could cause some more intestinal discomfort. So rinse your beans and enjoy your beans. They're delicious. So now we find ourselves in the dreaded center aisles. This is where you can get into a lot of trouble. We want to limit the amount of time that we actually spend here. So we're going to take this opportunity to talk about the 4 food groups and how we can actually use the 4 food groups and balance our meal plates. You want half your plate to be vegetables. We talked about the importance of that food group and how that's where all of our vitamins and our minerals are. They're also really low in carbohydrates, so they help us feel fuller, but don't really contribute a huge amount to our glycemic or to our blood sugars after the meal. When we're thinking about portion sizes for vegetables, ideally it's the amount that you can hold in both your hands. So big hands, lots of vegetables. When we're thinking about our starches or the size of fruit, we can also use the size of our fist. That's a good portion size. And then a quarter of our plate is the protein. So that's our meats and alternatives. A portion size of meat is the size of the palm of our hands and the thickness of our pinky finger. That's about 2.5 ounces. So I know that may seem like it's a little bit small, but 2 portion sizes, 2 servings of protein, so about 5 ounces at a meal, I'd say, is a good amount. Ideally, you want to have 3 out of 4 food groups at your meals, and have your snacks have at least 1 to 2 of the food groups. So thanks so much for joining us. It was great to be able to spend some time with you. Hopefully you now feel more confident in your next trip to the grocery store and feel more comfortable about making healthy food choices to help you manage your diabetes. Everything fits in moderation, and just have fun.